Companies need lawyers who understand the business strategy, understand the law and the regulations, and can connect them into a solution.
Larry Denny, SVP, Chief Legal Officer and Corporate Secretary at 8x8, is redefining modern legal leadership where governance becomes acceleration. He aligns law, privacy, and security, turning risk into business growth.
How do good lawyers become great general counsels?
What you have to do is you have to have that critical analysis, that critical thinking, that ability to connect the dots and ask the right questions.
With the advent of AI, so much of things can be done in-house. Your reliance on the outside counsel is reducing.
I don't think so. AI is incredibly fast and it has tons of implications. Really, it's not AI that's going to take our jobs.
How did you know that you did not want to be in the law firm?
Law school teaches you some very fundamental skills, but it doesn't necessarily teach you.
Larry, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Larry, I've seen your beautiful career, how you progressed from law firms, from Big Law, Morrison Foerster, and then TiVo, and now you're working with 8x8 as a Chief Legal Officer. You progressed in your career beautifully, and it's actually an example for a lot of people who are watching this show, lawyers in their early 30s, lawyers who are graduating this year, next year. Tell us, how do good lawyers become great general counsels?
Yeah, it's a very good question. The law provides some fantastic training. It teaches you to think critically, to question, to analyze things in detail, all excellent skills. And I think it's important as a young lawyer and then transitioning upwards in your career, you become more invested from just a legal advisor, someone who can explain the law, talk about the law, into seeing it develop and developing yourself into someone who's more of a strategic operator, right? Someone who understands business. So, for example, in my career, I always sort of had the vision of myself going in-house. And, it wasn't about coming out of law school, I wanted to be a partner at a law firm. I just sort of knew that early on. But I knew that the idea of being in-house at a company, being there to help the company solve its problems, grow its business, it all is about how modern CLOs are operating today, which is they're becoming strategic operators. The role of regulatory compliance, AI, data governance, all of these things are pressing down on companies, especially tech companies, especially companies like in my sector, cloud communications. We're a global cloud communications company. We have employees in over 30 countries, customers in over 50 countries, and we provide services in over 180 countries. So, the complexity of, global data management, AI, etc., are things that are critical and strategic value drivers for the company. And so as a lawyer, you have to move from just, an advisor of the legal to translating that into business outcomes.
When it's a strategic operator and translating your law into a business outcome, if you can explain that with an example.
Yeah. So, I've seen many different technology transitions in my career. I worked at TiVo. We were very at the cutting edge of a number of interesting things around, for example, copyright and patent and audience measurement and data privacy. All of these things were things that I dealt with in my career. And what really it's important to understand is, let's take an example, audience measurement from the TiVo days, right? There was an interest in, how do we sort of look at the data that we have about what programs and TV shows people are watching, right? But how do we monetize that for advertisers in a way that's anonymous, that's aggregated, that is compliant with GDPR and some other areas. And then you can enable different products. TiVo is very early on in that, but that's an example of how we as lawyers have to be involved with the product teams at the design stage, right? Privacy by design, security by design. Advising product teams is about having empathy for what they're trying to accomplish and helping them get there, while also providing them the foresight to see around various regulatory and other risks.
Interesting. Uh, you mentioned last in your last question that you knew that you do not want to become a partner in a law firm and you wanted to come in house. Now there are two or three paths a lawyer can take. Let's say three paths. One path is becoming a partner in a law firm, stay in the law firm, become a partner. Second path, let's say you join a smaller company, become a general counsel in a smaller company, versus going into a large corporation, let's say a Google or a Meta, where you will take a lot of time to become a general counsel, but you will learn a lot. So how did you know that you did not want to be in the law firm? How can somebody
Well,
know?
it's a good question. A lot of lawyers don't know what they want to do coming out of law school, right? Sometimes, it's not infrequent that a lot of people went to law school not knowing what they wanted to do, right? So I know, like, when I was in law school, I really valued the learning, the training, the deep thought. I mean, I loved constitutional law. That was fascinating. I knew I didn't want to be a constitutional lawyer per se, but I loved, just thinking about, the overall sort of constitution and how to interpret these principles into modern life. I mean, all of those things are very interesting. For myself, I knew coming out of law school that I had to get the training, right? Law school teaches you some very fundamental skills, but it doesn't necessarily teach you all the practical realities of being a lawyer, right? And I wanted to be a corporate lawyer, and I certainly didn't know everything about securities law and security forms and things when I was coming out of law school. So you go to a law firm and you get that training, but I knew for my own purposes, I really enjoy the aspects of business, right? Helping a business grow, develop new products, become more successful. I think that's really interesting. And that's something that always motivated me. And my legal training has been very valuable in making me a very strategic operator, advisor, and not just a, here's what the law says kind of thing. I have to think ahead of time, right? So, I listen to my CEO. He tells me about his strategy, things that he's thinking about, and I have to anticipate, right? I have to think, okay, he wants to do XYZ. All right, well, that involves, we have customers in Europe, for example. Oh, so we've got to think about the EU Data Act, the EU AI Act, the UK Telecom Act, because we are a voice over IP company as well as some other things in our SaaS service. So there's a lot of complexities here, and we have to help the teams navigate. But yeah, so for me, I think that's really interesting. And, probably this is, pretty, typical of lawyers will say, but like, it's very true for me, right? You either, as a law firm partner, you're advising many clients, right? So you don't always get to be as deep in the weeds of what driving things for that specific client, because you've got many clients, right? So it's kind of the opposite. You're one client, but you're very deep with that client. And I really like that.
So are you saying as in-house counsel you're able to go on deep with one client, but there are a lot of laws you got to take care of, from GDPR to IP to corporate to contract to M&A, lot of laws. Or in the law firm, a person can pick up one, let's say, field of law as an M&A, and for M&A he will advise multiple clients. So are we able to go deep in a law firm, or are we able to go deep as a general counsel in-house?
Well, it's a good distinction, right? So if you're in a law firm, you're often going to be specialized in a specific area. So your expertise might be M&A or intellectual property, but you may be deep in a specific area of expertise, but in terms of your depth with a particular client, right? You may be advising them on intellectual property, but you may not have, any involvement on the employment or litigation side or the M&A side, right? So it's definitely a very different kind of engagement, but that's what makes so interesting about being a chief legal officer. You have the opportunity to oversee so many different areas, but you're all driving for the same outcome in terms of that one specific client. You understand, what is the chief executive officer want to accomplish? What does the board want to accomplish? How are we delivering value to our shareholders? And that's something that I talk with our legal team a lot with, right? Is how do we as lawyers deliver value in the company, right? And that's really the most important thing. And that's how we as lawyers become trusted advisors, right? We're not just telling people no, right? Oh, you can't do that. That's against the law. We're providing them solutions like, oh, here's a better way of approaching that, or here are the other issues you should consider, and maybe we have some solutions here. And right, we were talking about this recently with our product counsel team, right? What makes a good product lawyer, right? A good product lawyer is someone who has empathy, who listens, who uh, you know tries to understand what the product teams are accomplishing, and they're not there to sort of tout their expertise in law and privacy and other things. They're there to help the product team accomplish their goals. And so, right, so that can all come out in many different ways. For example, right, you might ask leading questions like, oh, hey, uh, I I see you're collecting some, you know, information from these customers. That is, have we thought about how we're holding that information, what we're doing with that information, what we're going to use it for, right? You might ask questions to just flesh out the ideas more, and then they'll say, oh, well, yeah, we're getting credit card information. Oh, okay, that's interesting. We should probably think about PCI requirements and some other things. Each of these kinds of things roll over, but you don't want to get in there and uh, you know, basically interrupt the creative process of developing a product. You want to be there to sort of help guide them and provide them insights as they move along in the process. But one of the things that we talk about as well is like getting in there early is also important, right? So privacy by design, right? If we're as a legal team not involved until after the product team has written the PRD and the engineering team's already started the development work, right? And then they're coming to like the NPI process, like the new product introduction process, right? We're already too late. Like if we're sitting there going, oh guys, we forgot about this, regulatory thing. And they're like, well, we already just, spent 3 months coding this thing. It would have been nice to know. Right. And so, these are the things that we have to do as a legal team.
So are you suggesting that the product team should be consulting with the lawyers and CLOs early while before developing any kind of new features, so as to ensure that we're not stepping on any law by mistake and flouting the law basically?
Yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, that is a preferred process but it's also a sensitive process. You have, as a lawyer, you have to develop that trust with the teams, because otherwise, it's very easy. And I've seen this throughout my career, right? Where business people start viewing the legal team as like the department of no, right? Like if we go to them, they're just going to tell us we can't do it. They're not going to provide us solutions. Like I'm not sure I want to get deal with that at this point. I'll deal with it later or whatever. Whereas like if we can be strategic in our guidance, right? Strategic operators, system builders, helping the company and the teams reach their objectives. It's very important, right? So in another interesting area is AI, right? So AI is moving fast. The technology is evolving incredibly fast, right? And it has tons of implications for how companies control data, what their data governance process is, what their data risk process is, what their data privacy process is, right? And so like, for example, if the product team's implementing a new AI model, but they haven't considered the fact that, how are we going to delete data when a customer leaves, right? Or how are we going to have a customer export or take their data with you, which, if you're subject to the EU Data Act, is a new requirement for customers in the EU. These are all important considerations that, after the fact become very difficult to deal with if you haven't thought about them at the design stage.
Very interesting. So Larry, you have led functions across global M&A, telecom, and now AI. And tell us how the regulatory needs are changing and how should the legal leaders be behaving in a company?
Yeah. So, for me, I have a couple different roles and responsibility at 8x8. So I'm Chief Legal Officer. I oversee all of our legal, regulatory compliance. I have government relations, right? So we are a regulated entity. We deal in regulated space, telecommunications. And so even that government relations aspect is an important aspect of what I do as part of my job, right? But then I also have oversight over our information security team. So I have our Chief Information Security Officer that reports to me. That's often, thought of as maybe a unusual or atypical process or arrangement. But I've actually found that I think that it benefits a company like ours immensely to have that close connection between the legal and information security, right? Because we have tons of certifications, cyber trust, all of these things our security team manages. Our security team provides a lot of information and guidance to the organization, and having that ability to separate the security team from maybe some of the other operating teams, it gives them that additional level of independence and allows us to, better think about all of the different issues that might need to go into, us developing remediation plans and looking at vulnerabilities and helping the company's risk management process develop and identify the proper risks, and then building a process around not only disclosing and surfacing those risks to our senior management, right, but also working with our different teams, engineering, IT, etc., for developing mitigation plans or remediation plans, things like that. I also, in my role, also have an operating role. So I'm not really able to talk too much about it right now because we haven't really launched it, but it's at the intersection of telecom, our global infrastructure, and some of the AI and other stuff we're working on. But it's a new P&L responsibility for me, and it's been fun, and it's really interesting, and it's the CEO, our CEO, came to me and asked me to take on this additional responsibility because he's like, well, there's just so much compliance and regulatory and other things involved in this. I thought you would be the perfect person to sort of take these different disparate elements together and sort of, bring them to life. And so, yeah, that's been something I've been doing, and it's been a lot of fun. And I maybe I can come back in, 6 or 9 months, and when it's all sort of launched, and we can talk more about it. That'll be fun.
Absolutely. But is it usual? Is it usual for lawyers and CLOs to take up a P&L and a new branch and a new business line? Or is it unusual?
No. I don't think so. some of it is, I've spent a lot of time in my career doing M&A. You end up When you do M&A, you end up getting very deep in the weeds on specific businesses and things like that. So it's not uncommon for lawyers to, you know, uh, chief legal officers and things to have some involvement with acquired businesses going forward, because you end up as an executive knowing so much about those businesses. But yeah, no, this was a bit unusual, and I jumped at the chance. It was very exciting. It's a lot of fun. And as a chief legal officer, the first meeting with the team, they were like, "You're the lawyer. Why are you doing this?" And you know, I think after 1 or 2 weeks, they were like, "Oh, okay, I get it. This makes sense. This is actually fun." And the team, we're having a blast because it's all green field for us. So um, you know, it's fun to create something entirely new.
Beautiful, beautiful. Larry, tell us about the toughest challenge you faced in your career and how did it shape you as a lawyer?
Yeah. You know, I, I think I don't know if I have one specific instance where I was, uh, it somehow changed my trajectory. But I will say that you know, as you go along in your career, especially as an in-house attorney, right? Um, you have to really get comfortable with risk, right? Whether it's legal risk, contractual risk, regulatory risk, right? Because oftentimes where there's risk, there's also business opportunity, right? The laws may not be entirely clear on, sort of, how what the expectation is, how they apply to new technologies, new opportunities, and that's green field for companies, right? And so as a lawyer, as a chief legal officer, I have to be a strategic advisor to the company. Like, how can we go after this opportunity? How do we minimize risk, right? Because there may not be any case law, there may not be any sort of easily identifiable answers to some of the questions we have. And so we have to sort of say, okay, well, you know, this law was just implemented. Nobody knows exactly how it, might apply in specific situations. So we're going to have to, look at some other areas, make some educated guesses, and then, take some risk, because otherwise, our competitors are going to go do that. So, are we just going to choose not to do business because we don't have absolute certainty about something? No, you know and if it comes out later that you know we have a different view, a different interpretation of how things, then we have to pivot and we have to make changes.
And
But
how
that's
comfortable?
the fun part.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. The risk and the reward, absolutely, they go hand in hand. How comfortable a lawyer needs to be with products? You're working in a tech company, you become half tech
Yeah,
lawyer.
I mean, look, I've worked with lawyers who have an engineering background, a technical background. I have a political science background, and an entertainment background. So maybe not, I'm going to be the most technically, forward. But a lot of times, especially as a leader, right, you don't have to have, the ability to understand at a, software code level the answers and challenges. What you have to do is you have to have that critical analysis, that critical thinking, that ability to connect the dots and ask the right questions, right? And I have, some great lawyers on my team, and they have dug into various areas, become experts in things like, Salesforce and data, migration and other software, and frankly, it's helped them speak the language of our internal operations team and provide them with the right advice. Yeah. So, I mean, as a tech lawyer, you just have to be uh, eager, um, curious, and I think the most importantly, empathetic, right, to your product teams, and really sort of you know try and understand what they're doing and ask questions. That's the other thing. Like young lawyers, and it actually doesn't apply just to young lawyers. Just early in their career, employees at any level, in any department, any company, it it's very hard to ask questions. People are nervous because, oh well, if I ask a question, I'm going to show that I don't know this thing, so people are going to think I, you know, am dumb or whatever. And I tell my deputy general counsel, the thing I love about him the most is he will always ask the question. He's always willing to ask questions. And I've been in so many meetings where he's asked a question, and I look around the room and like half the faces are like, "Oh yeah, I had that same question." Right? And it's like, and and sometimes it's just like I may be the only one who doesn't understand. I need you to connect the dots. I'm not following your train of logic here. Please, explain it again, right? And you have to be comfortable, right, with the idea that yeah, I'm still a smart person even if I don't know every single answer to every single question, right? And we're all there together to accomplish a goal. And if we can't, you know, explain things, ask questions, and come to a common understanding, well, we're never really going to accomplish much.
Absolutely, absolutely, Larry. Larry, tell us, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh gosh. Hmm. Other than after college, immediately going to Silicon Valley and joining Yahoo, or you know, um, yeah, I think I did. My career path was probably a little, you know, not a straight line, right? There's a little zig and a zag. And I think, the reality is, I think I ended up exactly where I like to be, where I'm really feeling like I'm providing value and delivering, um, you know, important outcomes to the business. And so I think my advice to my younger self would be, really think about like what interests you, what motivates you each day. I think it's really hard for, I think, younger people who may be in college or going to law school. It's expensive. You oftentimes graduate with debt and you feel like you have limited options, right? And so, I think about that, myself. I graduated from law school with a ton of debt. Fortunately, when I graduated, law school wasn't expensive as it is now. I went to Columbia, and I'm embarrassed to say how much I paid when I went, and how much it is now is even more insane. Um, but I when I graduated, first year salaries had just made a huge jump. Interest rates, were high. It was early 2000, but then they started going down in 5 or 6 years, so that helped. So it worked out. But like, it's not about going to the best school. It's not about taking on a ton of debt. I would say, if you have the ability, make sure you give yourself as much flexibility um, as you can to make the choices that are right. So, for example, one choice that I didn't pursue when I graduated law school was I really wanted to go into the government and join the SEC. I thought that would be really interesting. I really liked corporate law and securities law, but I couldn't make the math work on my student loans, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go to a law firm, and maybe I'll change my mind in a few years. But uh, yeah, I was really happy with the path I took, and the ability to join TiVo. Just a really innovative company, some challenging industry dynamics. I could spend uh, days talking about TiVo in the years. An amazing company, amazing product. Certainly world changing in many ways. But we also it was an interesting um, time because I think as lawyers we had a big impact on the business. We pursued some patent litigation at TiVo, and we collected over $1 billion in damages. At the same time, we helped it evolve from a consumer only business to a service provider business, which is a very different thing. And then, ultimately it was acquired by another company. In fact, they just recently announced that they were discontinuing the DVR. So an end of an era.
Interesting. It is full cycle, full circle. Uh, Let it tell us about how big is the legal team currently in 8x8?
Yeah, so 8x8's legal team right today is 16 lawyers, um, based in the US, the UK, and EMEA. Um, uh, but we also have significant business operations in the APAC. So we'll probably have another lawyer there soon. We, have different functions. We have corporate, we have commercial, we have employment, litigation, IP, privacy, and regulatory. So, yeah.
Hmm. And how are you ensuring your legal function is an AI first legal function?
It's a really good question. So we've been very aggressive as a legal team in terms of getting our attorneys access to various tools. At the most basic level, right? Everyone in our team has access to ChatGPT and Gemini. Okay. It's important as lawyers for them to understand how those tools work, how to utilize them, how to incorporate them into what they do, because you know people are very scared about, like, oh, how is AI going to change the world for lawyers, right? That's one profession that people think, oh well, that's there are going to be less lawyers in the world. I don't know. I can't answer that question. But as I tell my team, like, we have to be expert in AI, because really it's not AI that's going to take our jobs. It's someone else who is better at AI than us. Like, that is the world we're moving towards in the future, right? Because you know yeah, maybe I'm not going to build a giant legal team, because we have some AI tools that make the people I have more efficient, allow us to do faster red lines, allow us to do legal research in a faster way. But also, I think, and we talk about this at a team level all the time, which is, hey, tell us about something you did in the last week that, you know, you used AI for that was very helpful, right? And then I also, ask people, tell us about something you did in the last week with AI that wasn't very helpful, right? Because that's how we learn as a team, right? And I gave this example to the team the other day. Well, it wasn't the other day; it was a couple months ago. But it's a very relevant example. I had a question on a very obscure securities law, right? And I had the facts and the scenario, and I was experimenting with ChatGPT and Gemini, and I got what I initially viewed as a very good answer from ChatGPT, only to be, when I went to the actual regulation, I noticed that it got the holding period wrong. Instead of 6 months, it was a year, which is a big deal. And so, you know, like at the team level, we talk about like things like, hey, if you're using AI, it's trust but verify. You don't just take the output and then just roll with it. You have to make sure that what the output it's giving you is correct. So that means going back and looking the actual cases. Like so far, I've been unimpressed with our current AI tools. We've demoed some other things, other more legal specific tools, and those are getting more um, sophisticated for sure. And it is exciting. And you see a future where but like case law, for example, is a good area where like generic AI tools aren't very good. Uh, they will oftentimes tell you uh, the the answer you want to know versus the answer that is the right answer, right? Like, especially you have to be careful about how you do the prompt. So we talk a lot about how do you do prompts and things like that. But at a higher level, that's just sort of like making the lawyers themselves like better users of AI. And we're also constantly doing POCs on new tools because I do think I'm a big proponent of buying more tools, but it has to be the right tools. And so we do a lot of POCs of different tools that we don't end up moving forward with because we're just like, nah, it's not ready yet. It's not worth the cost benefit analysis doesn't make sense, et cetera, et cetera. But at a higher level, at a company level, we talk about the importance of AI about everything because it's driving how we structure teams, how we structure work, how we structure internal processes, right? I'm not in engineering, but the world of engineering is changing rapidly, right? The whole idea of a Scrum team is evolving with the AI tools that make these teams much more, sophisticated and capable of doing so much more coding, right? So they do things like, you know, are we going to have a pod in engineering instead of a Scrum team, right? And a pod could be a product designer, a coding specialist, and one other person, right? An architect or something. Like the world is going to be very different for all of us in companies. So yeah, it's I think AI.
So the role of GCs is changing. The role of GCs is changing with AI. To how much extent it has changed, and what do you think will never change?
So the role of the CLO is always evolving, but I think it's absolutely moving from one of legal advisor to strategic operator. I think companies are realizing that the right CLOs become extremely positive business amplifiers, just like having the wrong lawyers can hinder. You can miss opportunities. You're too conservative. You're too sort of, rigid in how you're approaching things, right? Companies need lawyers who understand the business strategy, understand the law and the regulations, and can connect them into a solution, not into, for example, a no, a brick wall, et cetera, right? And that's how lawyers like CLOs and others become trusted business advisors because very quickly, right? CEOs, COOs, CPOs, et cetera, CROs, they start realizing, hey, um, I should call Larry because, he might have a solution. He might have an answer, right? And, one of the things I talk about with the team is, you know, part of our job at every level in the legal organization is making sure that the other departments are not letting things like compliance said or legal said or accounting said be blockers for business processes, right? So for example, if something's like we'll see this from time to time, another team will say, oh, this is a legal issue, or legal said we can't do this. My response is every time there's a legal blocker or a legal issue, we need to have a name attached to it. Like, who said it? Because we need to be responsible for, the advice we're giving and, any challenges or other things. And then also it helps us as an organization understand, okay, well, it was, Bob in accounting that said, this is a rev rec issue. Okay, so we know who to go talk to. We're going to go talk to Bob. We're going to find out the details. Maybe he didn't have all the background or context, right? And with some additional discussion, oh, we found a solution, right? Same thing, legal, compliance, etc., right? And also, it's a liberating thing in a lot of ways for other teams because, oh, I'm not the person who has to make the legal decision about this. The lawyers can, and therefore I should, let the legal team, advise on this versus, oh, well, we can't do this because of compliance, or this was a privacy issue 5 years ago, so we can't do that, right? It's like, okay, well, maybe it was a privacy issue, maybe that law changed, maybe we already implemented system fixes that make that no longer an issue. I mean, there's just a lot of questions and things for us, but yeah, in the world of AI, things are just changing so fast and so rapidly that that's really, at the end of the day, the most important things for us as legal teams, as CLOs, as executives. We have to be strategic operators, system builders, and view ourselves as part of the business, not separate and apart.
That's awesome, Larry. Larry, do you also think that with the advent of AI, so much of things can be done in-house, your reliance on the outside counsel is reducing?
Maybe in certain ways, probably maybe overall, but outside counsel always will have a role, because, right, like we utilize outside counsel for very specific expertise, right? We're not just like sending out run-of-the-mill things today. So even in the future, like outside counsel is going to always continue to have a role in certain things, especially when it requires specific, deep niches of expertise, be it patents or patent litigation, right? For most companies, like unless you're the biggest company, you're not handling litigation internally, right? You have some lawyers who can manage pre-litigation, supervise litigation, but you don't have the resources on your team to actually handle the actual litigation, right? And the same for I'll say we do a lot of telecom regulations. We have expert attorneys on our team for telecom, but we still leverage outside counsel because there are new laws coming into play every day, and we have to understand, well, how are these things being interpreted? How have they seen regulators addressing these? How are other companies addressing these things? These are all important contextual issues that we'll continue to utilize outside lawyers for. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe at a highest level our spend as an overall legal team goes down, but that's natural ebb and flow, right? Even before AI, a company would be like, okay, well, we're now spending X amount on employee issues, we should hire an employment lawyer, right? And then the spend goes down, and then you have more employees and more issues, and then the spend goes up, and then you hire another employee lawyer, right? And then with AI, hopefully those employment lawyers are even better and they can do more, so.
So, there's a trend, Larry, that, the very smart minds are leaving the big tech companies and moving to companies like 8x8 and more frontier companies, more agile companies. How is that happening? How are the frontier companies able to attract great talent? What's happening?
I think I don't know if it's a trend per se. I can tell you that, um, you know, if you're at a really big company, right, you may be very limited in the scope of things and work you're doing, right? So you may be supporting a very, specific area of one product on privacy, and you don't really get involved. The great thing about going to a company like a mid-market company like 8x8 or some of these smaller companies is you have the opportunity to get exposed to a whole bunch of different things. So you might be a privacy lawyer, but you come to a company like 8x8, you're not doing just privacy. You're doing AI, data governance, risk management. You're getting involved in a whole bunch of different things, which frankly, like in my mind, makes our job way more exciting than, oh, I'm the trademark lawyer and I'll help you register that trademark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Uh, Tell us about the mentors and coaches that you have that have shaped your career. How important are they? How to find them?
I have the mentors and whatnot that have shaped my career. That's a good question. I wish I had more mentors. I think, everyone does. I was fortunate, in my career to work with a fantastic boss for a number of years who really valued my input, and also had a way of sort of leading that allowed myself and other lawyers to really develop their skills. And I think, I was talking to one of our executives the other day, and as you become a senior executive in a company, right, you're no longer like the super individual contributor. You're not running every single project and every single issue that your teams are handling, right? You become the cultural leader, you become managing by outcomes, right? So it's about driving the culture. So when I work with our legal team, right, it's about they they value from me transparency, visibility, honesty. Like they want to understand what's going on in the business, and they also want to know sort of like how they can become better lawyers, what they can do to be, more, deliver more value, right, to the organization. And that's, we spend a lot of time as a legal team talking about how we as lawyers can deliver value, right, to the teams. And value is not the like, the law says this and, you know, you can't do that. Value is helping the organization achieve its outcomes in the most risk managed way possible, right? I mean, I'm not a CEO, but CEOs have tough decisions every day, trade offs, right? Oh, I only have so many engineers. So I have to do this project, and these two projects over here aren't getting managed. And so, like, part of my job is to give visibility on potential risks, legal risks, regulatory risks, product risks to our executive team, to our chief product officer, so that they can make informed decisions, right, at the end of the day. And they want to know, like, hey, am I making the right decision? Is this, you know, is this, something that's going to like violate the law, or is this like, something that's just going to potentially be, some other risk, right? That's less definitive. And they need that, but they also, need solutions, not just sort of, hey, this is a problem, right?
In Tell us, Larry, how should lawyers measure success apart from money? How should they measure success?
Well, I mean, I think lawyers, like anybody, not just uh, people who have law degrees, I mean, you should measure success by your ability to have an impact in your job, by enjoying your job, right? Does your job make you excited to go to work each day? Um, and, you know, hope that you can find an organization and people that you like to work with, right? That's how you measure success, right? I mean, yes, it's very easy to get caught up in, oh, am I paid as much as, this other person, or do I have the title or whatnot? And that just, you know, death by a thousand cuts, right? Comparison, will always make you feel less adequate because there's always going to be someone with a better title, more pay, etc. Right? And so those can't be the things that sort of drive you and provide you with, the idea that, with happiness, right? Um, Yeah, there was something else I was thinking about, but I lost my train of thought on that one. But yeah.
That's okay. Okay, so the impact and enjoy your work and make sure you also touched upon the aspect of money in the beginning. Where is the money? Is the money in the law firms or money is in in-house?
I think on a pure dollars basis, I don't know. I mean, law firm partners make a lot of money, so you know, I, I mean, there are GCs that make a lot of money as well. Just like there's CEOs and others that make a lot of money. But I don't know. I mean, I think if money's your sole driver, I think law firm, especially the right law firm, you might be able to get that right. But is that gonna be um, what makes you happy in like 30 or 40 years? Not that I'm saying like, you know, being a law firm, but I'm saying like making all your decisions based on money, right? My daughter's in college and I asked her what she wanted to do and she said, I wanted to make a lot of money. And I said, well, I think that's a good outcome. I'm not sure that that's, should drive all your decisions because, you could easily be in a job that you don't like, that you're unhappy with, and, a career path that's not taking you to the place where you want to be, right? At the same time, like, you know, I'm not like, I'm not like work life balance, all that. Like, I get excited to work. I get excited to be successful in my job. Um, maybe that's some of what, drives me as to be a successful lawyer is just like, I don't mind working now. I try not to send emails on the weekend. I, the, the, um, delay send is a great, thing because there's no need to get an email from your CLO on the weekend unless it's like an urgent thing. But for me, it's like, well, I like what I'm doing, and it's moving forward, and I feel like I'm delivering value to the company, right? So those are the things that make me happy, and I think are important distinctions for people when they're thinking about their careers.
Hmm. What about does money come with sacrifices? So especially in your law firm, people are billing 2,000 hours per year, 2,400 hours per year. Somebody told me, Amit, make sure you are not paying too much for your money. Are lawyers in the US paying too much for their money?
Yeah, I
They're
mean,
missing the important events of their life and the kids' birthday parties and whatnot. Are
yeah,
lawyers in the US paying too much for their money?
yeah. I mean, time is finite, right? And so if if your pay is measured by the increments of time that you put in, right, billable hours, right, it does sort of make it a very stark, you know, contrast, right? But lawyers, we work hard, right? I do think it's important, though, that, like you said, right, personal relationships, family. I mean, at the end of the day, like, right, that's why we have jobs. That's why we want to make money, is we want to provide for our families. And so, yeah, it's really important that you have to keep it in perspective, right? And, fortunately, I like my job because it does give me flexibility, right? So if I have to, go to the doctor's office with my kids at 4 o'clock on a Friday, which I have to do today, I can, right? And I have the ability to say, okay, well, those are things that need to get done. They'll get done maybe this weekend, right? And I can push things around, and I think we have to understand, and I know it's very difficult as a law firm partner to manage that work-life balance because you have clients with strong demands, and as an in-house attorney, you have clients as well, for sure. But sometimes can be more difficult as an outside lawyer. But being in-house, that's the benefit of being in-house is you really feel like you're part of the team. You're not just a lawyer. You're a partner, contributor, and you're helping the team accomplish its goals, right? And some of my leaders on the legal team, they spend probably just as much time working with some of our business operations teams and others, trying to solve thorny problems, and that aren't necessarily legal in nature, right? When our sales team is putting out a new promotion for the channel or something, right? Our job is not only to say like, okay, well, what are the parameters, the rules, things like that, but like, hey guys, like, this is operationally complex. There is a high degree of changes and things, and as you add products, as time goes on, the complexity of trying to calculate and pay these promotions becomes exponentially more difficult. And so part of our job is to be like, have we thought about how we're going to actually comply with these terms internally, right? Things like that. So that's how we deliver value. It's not just like, yep, you listed all the rules, you should be fine. Or another obvious scenario in the same kind of vein is like, oh, somebody drafted up the promotion, it's got a full page on the back of T's and C's, and it's like, okay, well, we probably only need like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. I think we can get rid of the other 13 because they aren't necessary, or we help them simplify down to the basics, things like that. So, we talk all the time about how to deliver value.
Brilliant. Larry, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure talking to you. You shared so much wisdom around how to grow in your career, what to look for, how to use AI, the role of mentors, how to enjoy your work, and how do you make money. You make money by actually enjoying your work. If you're not really enjoying your work, you won't be able to make money for a long time. You'll quit. So a lot of beautiful wisdom you shared with us, and I think this is going to be very beneficial for people watching this show. I really want to thank you for your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been fantastic. I enjoyed our conversation.